The sun was setting over the rebuilt city of Busan. Red light painted the self-repairing buildings that had been constructed after the great solar flare of 2189. Kim Do-hyun walked home from his shift at the military base, his boots heavy on the path. He was tired after a long day of work. Do-hyun was 28 years old, tall for a Korean, with broad shoulders and dark eyes that missed nothing. His black hair was cut short in the military style. Small scars marked his hands and face, telling stories of a hard life on Earth. Earth was now called a death world by the aliens who had made contact 50 years ago. They said humans were strange because they lived on a planet that should have killed them. High gravity, extreme weather, dangerous animals, and strong bacteria, all these things made Earth special. And dangerous. Do-hyun reached his small apartment and pressed his hand to the door. It read his DNA and opened with a soft hiss. Inside, the lights turned on automatically. "Home system, play messages," he said, dropping his bag on the floor. "You have one new message," the system replied. "Source, unknown." Do-hyun frowned. Unknown sources were usually blocked by Earth's defense systems. Display message. The air in front of him sparkled and then filled with light. A perfect cube of golden light hung in the middle of his living room. It spun slowly, then opened like a flower blooming. Inside was a woman's face. She was Korean, maybe 50 years old, with streaks of gray in her dark hair. She wore a uniform Do-hyun didn't recognize, black with silver trim and a symbol of a star being born. "Engineer Kim Do-hyun," the woman said. "I am Headmaster Baek Yuna of Sunspire Academy. You have been selected to join our next class of students." Do-hyun's mouth fell open. Sunspire Academy was famous across the galaxy. It was where the best minds went to study. It was also a place where humans were rarely welcome. "Your work in xenobiology and your military service record have come to our attention," Headmaster Baek continued. "But more importantly, your physical and mental adaptations make you an ideal candidate for our program." The hologram changed to show a spinning model of Sunspire Academy, a massive ring-shaped station orbiting a giant red star. Do-hyun had seen pictures before but never expected to go there himself. Humanity's place in the Galactic Confederation remains complicated, the headmaster said carefully. Many species fear what they do not understand, and humans, with their death world, adaptations are not well understood. The message continued with details about the invitation. Do-hyun would study with students from 300 other species. He would learn about galactic politics, advanced technology, and interspecies relations. The program would last 3 Earth years. "A transport will arrive in 3 days to bring you to Sunspire Station," the message concluded. "Your government has already approved your participation. The choice, however, remains yours. We await your answer by tomorrow." The hologram closed, folding back into the golden cube, which then dissolved into sparkles of light. Do-hyun sat down heavily on his couch. His hands shook slightly. Sunspire Academy. The most prestigious school in the galaxy wanted him. Why? He was just an engineer with the Korean Peninsula Defense Force. Yes, he had specialized in adapting alien technology for human use, but surely there were better candidates. His personal communicator buzzed. It was his commanding officer, Captain Lee Min-jae. "I assume you got the invitation?" Captain Lee asked when Do-hyun answered. "Yes, sir. Did you know about this?" Captain Lee nodded. "The request came through official channels yesterday. I had to check if it was real." He paused. "It is real, Do-hyun. This is a big opportunity not just for you, but for all of us." "What do you mean, sir? Humans are still newcomers in the galaxy. Most alien species think we're too aggressive, too unpredictable. They don't trust us with their advanced technology. Sunspire graduates often become leaders in the Confederation. Having more humans there could change how the galaxy sees us." Do-hyun thought about this. He had joined the military to protect Earth after the Great Flare had weakened human defenses. Now he was being asked to serve humanity in a completely different way. "The headmaster mentioned my adaptations." What did she mean? Captain Lee's expression became serious. "You survived the Busan disaster when you were a child. You were trapped under a collapsed building for 6 days with no food or water. You should have died. The doctors couldn't explain how you survived. Do-yun touched the scar on his neck. He remembered darkness, crushing weight, terrible thirst, and something else, a feeling like his body was changing, becoming something else, something harder to kill. There are others like you, Captain Lee continued. Humans who survive what should be fatal. The aliens call it Deathworld adaptation. They find it concerning. They're afraid of us, Do-yun said quietly. Yes, but some, like Headmaster Beck, see potential instead of threat. Captain Lee leaned forward. So, will you accept? Do-hyun looked around his small apartment. His life on Earth was comfortable, predictable. At Sunspire, he would be surrounded by aliens who feared him, but he would also see wonders beyond imagination, learn technologies centuries ahead of Earth's, and maybe, just maybe, help humanity find its place among the stars. Yes, he said. I'll go. The next 3 days passed in a blur of preparations. Do-hyun said goodbye to his few friends, packed his meager belongings, and received countless briefings from military officials about what he could and couldn't share with aliens. On the 3rd day, he stood on the roof of the Defense Force headquarters. Captain Lee stood beside him. Remember your training, the captain said, but also remember who you are. You're not just representing Earth. You're representing humanity's future. A light appeared in the sky, growing brighter until it took shape, a vessel like nothing built on Earth. It seemed made of crystal and light, with no visible engines or windows. It descended silently, landing on the roof without even a whisper of sound. A section of the crystal ship became transparent, then disappeared completely, leaving an opening. A figure stepped out, tall, slender, with 4 arms and skin that shimmered like mother of pearl. She, wore robes that seemed to be made of living light. Engineer Kim Do-yun? The alien's voice was musical, translated by the small device on Do-yun's ear. I am Transport Specialist Alara. I will be escorting you to Sunspire Academy. Do-yun took a deep breath. This was it. He picked up his bag and nodded to Captain Lee one last time. I'm ready, he said, and stepped toward the ship. As he crossed the threshold, he felt a strange tingling, as if his body was being scanned down to the cellular level. The crystal walls of the ship were transparent from the inside, giving Do-hyun a perfect view as the ship rose silently into the air. Earth, his home, his death world, grew smaller below him. Soon it was just a blue marble in the blackness of space. And then, in a flash of light that somehow didn't hurt his eyes, Earth was gone. The journey to Sunspire Academy had begun. The journey to Sunspire Academy took 3 days. For Do-hyun, it was 3 days of wonder. The crystal ship moved through space in ways that seemed impossible. It didn't use engines like human ships. Instead, it folded space itself, jumping from one point to another like a stone skipping across water. Transport Specialist Ilara was kind but distant. She answered Do-hyun's questions about the ship and their journey, but always kept a careful distance from him. Once, when he moved too quickly, she flinched away. I apologize, she said, her 4 hands moving in what seemed like a nervous gesture. It is not personal. My species is sensitive to the pheromones humans produce. They trigger our danger responses. We smell like predators to you, Do-yun said, understanding. Ilara's pearly skin flushed pink. Yes, it is biology, not prejudice. The 3rd day, Do-yun woke from sleep to find the ship no longer moving. Outside the crystal walls, he saw a massive structure floating in space. It was Sunspire Academy. The station was ring-shaped, spinning slowly to create artificial gravity. At its center was a tower that stretched both inward and outward from the ring. The outer tower pointed toward a huge, angry red star, Aldebaran, Do-yun remembered from his briefings. The inner tower pointed away from the star, toward the blackness of space. The Sunspire, Ilara said, following his gaze. The tower that faces both ways, toward the light of knowledge and the darkness of ignorance. It is our symbol. The ship docked smoothly at one of the many ports along the station's outer ring. Ilara led Do-Yun through a series of doors that scanned and cleaned them before allowing entry to the station proper. "Welcome to Sunspire Academy," said a new voice. A small creature stood before them. It looked like a cross between a bird and a lizard, standing on two thin legs with feathers covering most of its body. A crest of bright blue feathers rose when it spoke. "I am Professor Kyo, your orientation guide," the creature said. Its voice was high and musical, coming from a translator device around its neck. "Engineer Kim, please follow me." Do-Yun thanked Ilara, who nodded and quickly returned to her ship. Then he followed Professor Kyo into the station. The hallways were wide and tall, clearly built to accommodate many different species. The walls seemed made of a living material that glowed softly, providing light. The floor was firm, but slightly springy under Do-Hyun's boots. As they walked, Do-Hyun saw his first glimpses of the academy's students and staff. There were beings of all shapes and sizes. Some looked almost human. Others were completely alien. Creatures made of crystal or gas, floating orbs of light, things with too many limbs or eyes. And everywhere he went, the same thing happened. Alien students would notice him, then quickly move away. Some made gestures that their translators didn't catch. Others simply stared as he passed. "Don't mind them," Professor Kyo said. "Most have never seen a Deathworlder before. They are curious but cautious." "They're afraid of me," Do-Hyun said quietly. "Yes," Kyo admitted. "But fear can become respect with time and understanding. That is why you are here." They entered a massive open space, the Grand Atrium, Kyo called it. It was bigger than any room Do-Hyun had ever seen. The ceiling was so high it disappeared in mist. Floating platforms moved through the air, carrying students from one level to another. Beams of light crossed the space, forming bridges that looked too thin to support weight but somehow did. In the center of the atrium was a hologram of the galaxy, spinning slowly. It was so detailed that Do-Hyun could see individual star systems. One small arm of the spiral was highlighted in blue, the territory of the Galactic Confederation. "Impressive, isn't it?" said a new voice behind him. Do-Hyun turned to find another, human. He was tall and lean with short black hair and a friendly smile. He wore the same uniform as the other students, a gray jumpsuit with colored patches on the shoulders. "I'm Han Ji-woo," the young man said, extending his hand. "Your roommate." Do-Hyun shook his hand, relieved to see another human face. "You arrived 3 cycles ago?" he asked, remembering what he had been told. "Yes." "I'm studying xenolinguistics, alien languages," Ji-woo explained. "Professor Kyo, I can take over from here if that's acceptable?" The bird-like professor nodded, its feathers rippling. "Very good. Engineer Kim, your schedule will be sent to your personal terminal. Classes begin tomorrow. Han Ji-woo will show you to your quarters." As the professor walked away, Ji-woo's smile became more genuine. "Finally, now we can talk normally." He gestured toward one of the light bridges. "Our dorm is this way. Trust the bridge. It will hold you." Do-Hyun followed Ji-woo onto the bridge of light. It felt solid under his feet despite looking like nothing but colored light. As they crossed high above the atrium floor, Ji-woo pointed out different areas of the academy. The libraries are there, training facilities over there, the dining halls are on the lower levels. They have food engineered for each species. The human food is actually pretty good. "How many humans are there here?" Do-Hyun asked. "Including you?" 5. Out of nearly 3,000 students. Ji-woo looked at him. "Like I said, we're rare and not always welcome." They reached their dormitory in the K7 block. The room was simple but comfortable, with 2 beds, 2 desks, and a shared living area. Large windows looked out into space, with a perfect view of the massive red star Aldebaran. "The windows are special," Ji-woo said. "They filter out harmful radiation and adjust the light to be comfortable for our eyes. The star would blind us otherwise." Do-Hyun set his bag down on the empty bed. "Why do they build a school next to such a dangerous star? It seems risky." That's the point, Jiwoo said. Headmaster Bayek believes comfort leads to weakness. The star reminds us of power we can't control. It keeps us humble. He checked his wrist terminal. The welcome ceremony starts in 1 hour. We should get ready. The welcome ceremony was held in the Great Hall, another massive space that could hold all 3,000 students. Headmaster Bayek stood on a floating platform in the center. Up close, she looked exactly like her hologram, dignified, serious, with streaks of gray in her dark hair. "Welcome to Sunspire Academy," she said, her voice carrying to every corner of the hall. "You are here because you represent the best your species has to offer. You will learn not just facts and skills, but understanding. Understanding of the galaxy, of other species, and of yourselves." She spoke about the year's focus, crisis management, and cooperation in extreme environments. Then she introduced each group of new students by their home planets. "And finally," she said, "our newest students from Earth, a clastoidine Deathworld, engineers Kim Do-yeon and Ri Jisoo." A murmur ran through the crowd. Do-yeon stood up along with a young woman a few rows away. She was short with a round face and determined eyes. She nodded to him briefly before they both sat down. As they sat, a tall, snake-like student in the front row rose up. Its scales were iridescent in the hall's light. "Headmaster," it said, its voice a hissing sound even through the translators. "I must question the wisdom of admitting more evolving apex predators into our midst. The humans have already proven unpredictable and dangerous." Headmaster Beck's expression didn't change. "Thank you for your concern, Student Sisseth of the Ophidian Collective. However, the galaxy's future requires understanding between all sapient species, especially those who evolved in conditions we find challenging." The snake-like student sat down, but not before giving Do-yeon a long, cold stare. After the ceremony, as Do-yeon and Jiwoo walked back to their room, Do-yeon noticed how other students moved away, creating a bubble of empty space around them. "Does it ever get easier?" he asked Jiwoo. "The isolation?" "A little. You make friends with the ones who can see past their fear." Jiwoo smiled. "But trust me, after what happened to me here, some fear can be useful." Back in their room, Do-yeon prepared for bed, tired after the long day. As he lay down, his personal terminal beeped with a new message. He picked it up and read the screen. "The immortal cannot die, but they can certainly be tested. Simulation Chamber 9, midnight." Do-yeon looked over at Jiwoo, but his roommate was already asleep. Or pretending to be. Either way, Do-yeon was on his own. He set an alarm for 11:45 p.m. and closed his eyes, wondering what test was waiting for him in Simulation Chamber 9. Do-yeon woke to the soft beeping of his alarm. The room was dark except for the red glow of Aldebaran coming through the window. On the other bed, Jiwoo appeared to be sleeping deeply. Do-yeon watched him for a moment, wondering if his roommate knew about the message. Moving quietly, Do-yeon dressed in his academy uniform. He checked the map on his personal terminal. Simulation Chamber 9 was 3 levels down, in the training sector of the academy. The hallways were mostly empty at this late hour. A few night shift staff members nodded to him as he passed. They were from species that preferred darkness, with large eyes that reflected the dim lights. None of them questioned why he was out of bed. Do-yeon found Simulation Chamber 9 at the end of a long corridor. The door was marked with warning signs in multiple languages. In Korean, it read, "Extreme Environment Training. Authorized personnel only." He hesitated, then pressed his hand to the door panel. To his surprise, it recognized him and opened with a soft hiss. Inside was a small room with another door at the far end. 3 people were waiting for him. 2 were human, a tall man with broad shoulders and a woman with short, spiky hair. The third was a small, furry creature with 6 arms and large, dark eyes. "You came," said the tall man. "Good. I'm Park Sung-ho, 3rd year combat tactics. This is Ri Jisoo." He nodded to the woman, whom Do-yeon recognized from the welcome ceremony. "And this is Technical Specialist Nix, our Procyon engineer." The furry alien made a chirping sound that the translator converted to, "The chamber is ready. All modifications are in place. What is this about? Do-hyun asked, looking from one face to another. Jisoo stepped forward. It's a test, an unofficial one. Her voice was low and intense. Every human student goes through it. The other species want to see if we really deserve to be here. Sungho nodded. The test is normally a 30-minute survival scenario. It's been reprogrammed to run for 4 hours with reduced safety protocols. Reduced safety? Do-hyun frowned. Isn't that dangerous? Very, said Nix, his fur rippling. But not, I think, for a Deathworlder such as yourself. Why are you helping with this? Do-hyun asked the small alien. You're not human. Nix's large eyes blinked slowly. I believe in judging individuals by their actions, not their biology. Also, I am curious. Sungho crossed his arms. You don't have to do this. You can walk away. But if you do, some students will take it as proof that humans don't belong here. And if I take the test? Then you prove them wrong, Jisoo said simply. Like we did. Do-hyun thought for a moment. He had come to Sunspire to represent humanity, to help change how other species saw his kind. Running from a challenge wouldn't help that goal. What's the scenario, he asked. Planet XR792, Nix replied. A Class 14th death world. Gravity twice Earth normal. Toxic atmosphere. Extreme temperature variations. Hostile native life forms. The system thinks you're here for regular practice, Sungho added. 3 senior students observing 1 junior. Everything appears normal in the logs. Who arranged this? Do-hyun asked. The 3 exchanged glances. Better you don't know, Sungho said finally, in case things go wrong. Will you do it? Jisoo asked, her eyes intense. Do-hyun took a deep breath. Yes. They led him through the inner door into the simulation chamber itself. It was a large, empty room with black walls, floor, and ceiling. Nix went to a control panel and began pressing buttons with his many fingers. The simulation creates a completely realistic environment, Jisoo explained. You'll feel everything. Gravity, temperature, pain. Your body is monitored constantly. If your vital signs indicate serious danger, the system will shut down automatically. Usually, Sungho added, the override reduces that sensitivity. You'll need to be closer to actual bodily harm before the system intervenes. Nix finished at the control panel and joined them. The chamber is ready. Engineer Kim, please stand. In the center. Do-hyun walked to the middle of the empty room. The others retreated to the door. The simulation will start in 10 seconds, Nix called. Your objective is simple. Survive. The door closed behind them, leaving Do-hyun alone in the black room. Then the blackness began to change. The floor beneath his feet became rocky, red soil. The air shimmered and took on a greenish tint. The gravity increased suddenly, making Do-hyun feel as if his body had doubled in weight. His bones ached with the pressure. Around him, a harsh landscape formed, jagged rocks, strange plants with sharp metallic leaves, a sky filled with swirling green clouds. In the distance, mountains belched fire into the air, and it was hot, terribly hot. Do-hyun felt sweat break out all over his body immediately. The air burned his lungs when he breathed. A small display appeared in the corner of his vision, showing oxygen levels, temperature, and a timer. 4 hour, counting down. Do-hyun looked around for shelter from the heat. He spotted a cave in a nearby cliff face and began moving toward it. Each step was an effort against the heavy gravity. His military training helped, but still, his muscles screamed in protest. As he approached the cave, the ground beneath his feet began to shake. At first he thought it was an earthquake. Then he realized the shaking had a pattern, like footsteps. From around the cliff came a massive creature. It walked on 6 thick legs and had a body covered in plates that looked like metal. Its head was a nightmarish collection of eyes and jaws. When it saw Do-hyun, it let out a shrieking roar that hurt his ears. Do-hyun's first instinct was to run, but in this gravity, the creature would catch him easily. Instead, he looked for a weapon. He grabbed a rock from the ground and threw it at one of the creature's many eyes. His aim was good. The rock hit the eye directly, but instead of soft tissue, the eye was covered by a clear, hard substance. The rock bounced off harmlessly. The creature charged. Do-hyun dove to the side, feeling the ground shake as the monster thundered past him. His lungs burned from the toxic air. His skin felt like it was on fire from the heat. But he forced himself to think clearly. If he couldn't hurt the creature, he needed to avoid it. He looked at the cave again. It was too small for the monster to enter. He ran for the cave, each step agony in the high gravity. Behind him, the creature turned for another charge. Do-hyun could feel its footsteps getting closer. He reached the cave and squeezed inside just as the creature slammed into the cliff face. Rocks fell around him, and for a terrible moment, he thought the whole cliff would collapse. But it held. Outside, the monster roared in frustration. Inside the cave, Do-hyun gasped for breath. The air was still toxic, but at least he was out of the direct heat. He looked around. The cave went deeper into the cliff. Maybe there was another way out, away from the monster. As his eyes adjusted to the darkness, he saw something strange. The walls of the cave were covered in small glowing crystals. They gave off a soft blue light and a faint humming sound. Curious despite his situation, Do-hyun moved closer to examine them. The crystals seemed to pulse in time with his heartbeat. When he reached out a hand, they glowed brighter. Suddenly, he felt a strange connection to the crystals, as if they were somehow alive and aware of him. An idea formed in his mind, not his own idea, but one that seemed to come from the crystals themselves. The monster outside roared again, reminding Do-hyun of his danger. He needed a way to survive, and he needed it fast. 4 hours in this environment would kill most beings, but perhaps not an immortal Deathworlder. Carefully, Do-hyun broke off one of the crystals from the wall. It continued to glow in his hand, warm and somehow comforting. Following an instinct he couldn't explain, he pressed it against his chest. The crystal seemed to melt into his skin, spreading warmth throughout his body. Suddenly, breathing became easier. The crushing gravity felt less oppressive. The heat was still uncomfortable, but no longer unbearable. Do-hyun looked at the cave walls with new understanding. These crystals were symbiotic life forms. They had recognized something in him, perhaps his Deathworld adaptability, and offered a partnership. Over the next hours, Do-hyun explored the cave system, finding more of the crystals and learning to communicate with them through touch and thought. They showed him how to avoid the planet's many dangers and how to find water hidden deep in the rocks. When the simulation finally ended, 4 hours later, Do-hyun emerged from the cave system with a necklace of crystals around his neck and a peaceful expression on his face. The black room reappeared around him as the alien world faded away. The door opened and Sungho Jisoo and Nix entered, their faces showing shock and amazement. Behind them was a fourth figure, Headmaster Baek herself. "This wasn't sanctioned," she said quietly, looking at the three who had arranged the test. Then she turned to Do-hyun, and he saw a hint of pride in her eyes. "However, it has been educational for all involved." Weeks passed at Sunspire Academy. Do-hyun settled into his classes and began to find his place in this strange world of aliens and advanced technology. His favorite class was practical xenobiology, where he learned about different species and how they adapted to their home planets. Word of his success in the simulation test spread quickly. Some students began to treat him with new respect. Others became even more afraid, keeping greater distance when he walked through the hallways. A small group of friends formed around Do-hyun. Ji-woo and Sungho were always there, along with Jisoo, who had taken her own test the night before Do-hyun. Nix, the Procyon engineer, joined them sometimes, still curious about human adaptability. They were joined by a fifth person, a young woman named Yoon Ji-young. She was half human, half Arcturian, with blue-tinted skin and silver eyes. Her dual heritage gave her a unique way of seeing both human and alien perspectives. "Humans are feared because they are unpredictable," she explained one day as they sat in the Academy's garden dome. "Most species evolve to fit one environment perfectly. Humans evolve to adapt to any environment. That makes you dangerous in alien eyes." but useful in dangerous situations, Sungho added with a smile. Today, Do-hyun and Ji-young were working together in the Academy's massive hydroponics facility. It was like a giant farm inside the station, growing food for all the different species. Plants from 100 worlds grew in special containers designed for their particular needs. They were collecting samples for a class project when Do-hyun heard voices coming from behind a tall rack of blue plants. He recognized the speakers as two of his instructors, Professor Kyo and a tall, gray-skinned alien named Director Voss who taught advanced technology. Project Immortal is proceeding faster than expected, Voss was saying in a low voice. The genetic sequences have been acquired. And the modification protocols? Asked Professor Kyo. Ready for testing. The question is whether to inform the Confederation Council before or after. After, said Kyo firmly. Some members would oppose the project if they knew its full scope. The instructors moved away, their voices fading. Do-hyun stood very still, trying to understand what he had heard. Project Immortal? Genetic sequences? Modification protocols? You shouldn't have heard that, said Ji-young quietly beside him. Her silver eyes were wide with concern. What's Project Immortal? Do-hyun asked. Ji-young shook her head. I don't know exactly, but my Arcturian parent mentioned it once. It's classified at the highest levels. She looked around nervously. Forget what you heard, Do-hyun. Some knowledge is dangerous. But Do-hyun couldn't forget. That night he told his friends what he had overheard. They met in a quiet corner of the garden dome, away from listening ears. It could be anything, Ji-woo said, frowning. Genetic research isn't unusual here. But why call it Project Immortal? Jisoo asked. And why keep it secret from the Confederation? Council? Nix, who had joined them, rubbed his furry hands together in a nervous gesture. There are rumors among the engineering staff, he said. Some say the Academy is studying Deathworlders to understand how you survive conditions that should kill you. Studying us? Like lab animals? Sungho's voice rose with anger. Not like that, Nix said quickly, with respect, to learn from you. They talked late into the night but reached no conclusions. Eventually, they agreed to keep their eyes and ears open for more information. 3 days later, disaster struck. Do-hyun was woken in the middle of the night by alarms blaring through the dormitory. Red emergency lights flashed in the darkness. Beside him, Ji-woo was already awake, coughing violently. What's happening? Do-hyun asked, his own throat burning suddenly. Air system, Ji-woo gasped between coughs. Something wrong. Do-hyun could smell it now, a sharp chemical odor in the air. His eyes began to water. His lungs felt like they were on fire. Around them, they could hear other students shouting and coughing. A message flashed on the room's communication screen. Environmental system malfunction, evacuate immediately. Ji-woo tried to stand but fell back onto his bed, his face turning blue. Can't breathe, he whispered. Do-hyun fought against his own burning lungs and pulled Ji-woo to his feet. Together, they stumbled toward the door. In the hallway, other students were rushing toward the emergency exits. Most were aliens whose bodies were less affected by the contaminated air. Carrying Ji-woo, Do-hyun made slow progress toward the exit. His vision began to blur. His legs felt weak, but he kept moving. They were almost at the exit when Ji-woo went completely limp in his arms. Do-hyun checked his pulse. It was weak and getting weaker. Looking back at the nearly empty hallway, Do-hyun made a decision. He dragged Ji-woo into a nearby storage room and closed the door. The room had its own small environmental system for storing sensitive materials. The air was cleaner here. Do-hyun laid Ji-woo on the floor and checked the room's computer terminal. Maybe he could call for help, but as he accessed the system, he found something strange. The environmental controls for their dormitory had been deliberately changed. Someone had pumped a toxic gas into the air system, a gas specifically designed to harm human physiology. This was no accident. It was sabotage. Using his engineer's training, Do-hyun traced the command back to its source, a secure terminal in the Academy's science section. Someone with high-level access had tried to kill them, A noise at the door made him turn. It opened to reveal a medical team in protective suits. They rushed to help Jiwoo, placing an oxygen mask over his face. More staff arrived to help evacuate the remaining students. Hours later, Do-hyun sat in the medical bay breathing through an oxygen mask. The doctors said he had been lucky. The toxin had been designed to target human respiratory systems. Most of the non-human students had been unaffected. All 5 human students had been hospitalized but would recover. "You saved Han Ji-woo's life," said a voice from the doorway. Headmaster Beck entered the room. She looked tired, with dark circles under her eyes. She sat in a chair next to Do-hyun's bed. "This was not an accident," Do-hyun said, his voice rough from the damage to his throat. "No," Beck agreed. "It was not. Someone tried to kill us. All the humans." Beck was silent for a long moment. Then she sighed deeply. "I think it's time you understood why you were invited to Sunspire Academy," she said. She took out a small device and activated it. A field of energy surrounded them, blocking any listening devices. "Certain factions within the Confederation fear humanity's potential," she explained. "Earth's classification as a death world isn't just about its harsh conditions. It's about the extraordinary adaptability of its life forms, particularly humans." She showed Do-hyun a small holographic projector. It displayed classified footage of human emergency workers continuing to function in radiation zones that would kill most species instantly, soldiers fighting despite injuries that would incapacitate others, children surviving in environmental conditions that alien scientists had deemed unsurvivable. "They call you immortal not because you cannot die," she said, "but because your species survives what evolutionary theory says should be extinction events." Do-hyun thought about the crystals in the simulation, how they had recognized something in him and formed a partnership instead of trying to consume him. "The Confederation fears what humanity might become in a few thousand years of further evolution," Beck continued, "and some want to ensure that evolution never occurs." "By killing us?" Do-hyun asked, shock in his voice. "Some would prefer that." "Solution, yes." Beck's face was grim. "Others wish to study you, to understand your adaptability. And a few, like myself, believe humanity may be the key to helping all species survive the challenges that lie ahead." She shut off the security field and stood up. "Rest now," she said. "When you are recovered, we will speak more. You and your friends must be careful. You are not just students here. You are representatives of humanity's future. And that future is both promising and dangerous." As she left, Do-hyun looked out the window at the massive red star beyond. Its power could destroy the station in an instant. Yet here they all were, living beside it, studying it, learning from it. Maybe that was what humanity meant to the galaxy, a dangerous power that could destroy, but also one that could teach, survival in a harsh universe. Do-hyun closed his eyes, his mind racing with new understanding of why he had been called the immortal Deathworlder. The attack on the human students changed everything at Sunspire Academy. Security was increased throughout the station. Students traveled in groups for safety. The 5 human students were moved to new quarters near the staff section, with special monitoring systems and dedicated security. 2 weeks after the attack, Do-hyun and his friends gathered in their new common room. Jiwoo had fully recovered, though he still coughed sometimes. On the table between them lay the evidence they had gathered about the sabotage. The toxin was specifically designed to attack human respiratory systems, Jisoo said, pointing to chemical data on her terminal. "It would have killed us all if the emergency systems hadn't activated." "And if Do-hyun hadn't saved me," Jiwoo added quietly. Sung-ho paced the room, his face dark with anger. "We need to find who did this." "I've been monitoring communications," Nick said. The Procyon engineer had become a full member of their group, risking his standing with his own people. "There are coded messages being sent from the Academy to various places in the Confederation. I can't break the code, but the pattern suggests an organized group." Ji-young, who had been silent until now, looked up from her own terminal. "I found something," she said. "In old Arcturian records, There's mention of a group called the Evolutionary Guidance Front. They believe certain species have developed in dangerous ways and should be controlled. Controlled how? Do-hyun asked, though he feared he knew the answer. Contained. Limited, or in extreme cases, eliminated. Ji-young's silver eyes were troubled. My Arcturian relatives didn't want to discuss it. They said it was just a fringe group with no real power. But what if it's not? Jisoo asked. What if they have people here at the academy? They all fell silent, considering the implications. If a powerful group within the Confederation wanted to control or eliminate humanity, Earth was in grave danger. We need more information, Do-hyun said finally. And we need to find out who's behind the attack. Their chance came sooner than expected. The next day, Headmaster Beck announced the annual Interspecies Crisis Response Competition. Teams of students from different species would face simulated disasters, testing their ability to work together in extreme conditions. This is perfect, Sung-ho said when they gathered to discuss it. If we form a team, we can access training simulations. That means access to the main simulation computers, where we might find evidence of who tampered with the environmental systems, Nix added, his fur rippling with excitement. They formed their team, all 5 humans plus Nix and Ji-young. They called themselves Team Adaptation. Many other students refused to join teams with humans, still afraid despite what had happened. But a few brave ones did, forming 3 other mixed teams that included human members. The competition was still 2 weeks away. In that time, they trained together in simulation chambers, learning to work as a unit. They also took turns secretly examining the simulation computers, looking for traces of the sabotage. It was Nix who found it. Look here, he said late one night, showing them a hidden program in the system. This code was used to access the environmental controls. It has a digital signature. Can you trace it? Jisoo asked. Yes, but it will take time. While Nix worked on tracing the saboteur, the day of the competition arrived. Team Adaptation gathered at Simulation Chamber 1, ready to face whatever challenge the judges had prepared. Remember, Do-hyun told his teammates, we're not just competing. We're showing the galaxy what different species can accomplish together. The simulation began. They found themselves on a damaged space station orbiting a dying star. Radiation levels were rising. Life support was failing. Fires burned in multiple sections. Their mission? Save the station crew and stabilize the station before the star's next flare. The team worked smoothly together. Do-hyun and Sung-ho handled the heavy physical tasks, moving debris and repairing hull breaches. Jisoo coordinated their efforts, keeping track of time and resources. Ji-woo used his language skills to translate the station's damaged computer systems. Ji-young's dual-species perspective helped bridge communication gaps. Nix's 6-armed dexterity made quick work of complex repairs. They were making good progress when suddenly all the systems around them flickered. The simulation changed. The gravity increased dramatically, crushing them downward. The air became thin and burning hot. Warning signs flashed. Safety protocols disengaged. This isn't part of the test, Ji-young gasped, struggling to breathe in. The thin air. Do-hyun realized what was happening. It's sabotage. Someone's changed the simulation to kill us. Their non-human teammates were suffering the most. Nix's small body was being crushed by the gravity. Ji-young's Arcturian half couldn't process the toxic air. The humans were struggling too, but their Deathworld adaptations gave them more time. We need to abort, Jisoo shouted, trying to reach the emergency controls. But the controls didn't respond. Do-hyun knew they had minutes, maybe seconds, before their non-human friends would die. There was no time to find who had done this or how to fix it. There was only one option. He closed his eyes and focused inward, seeking something he had felt once before, in another simulation. A dormant ability that humans almost never used. A final adaptation that activated only in near-death situations. His skin began to change, becoming harder, more resistant to the pressure. His lungs expanded, filtering the toxic air more efficiently. His mind accelerated, processing information faster. The others stared at him in shock as his body visibly changed. Then Do-hyun moved, faster than should have been possible in the crushing gravity. He reached Nyx first, picking up the suffering Procyon and carrying him to Jisoo. "Hold him," he said, his voice deeper, rougher. "Keep him breathing." Next, he went to Ji-young, who was turning blue from lack of oxygen. He placed his hand on her chest and somehow shared his own enhanced breathing with her. Color returned to her face. Then Do-hyun turned to the simulation controls. Instead of trying to abort the program, he dove deeper into it. His enhanced mind saw patterns in the code, found the trap, and turned it back on itself. The gravity began to normalize. The air cleared. As the simulation returned to normal parameters, Do-hyun saw something else. A hidden command node. Someone was actively controlling the sabotage. He traced it to a terminal in the observation room and sent out a station-wide alert with the location. When security forces broke into the observation room, they found 3 instructors and 7 students from various species. Among them was student Sisith from the Ophidian Collective, who had questioned human inclusion at the welcome ceremony. The simulation ended. Team Adaptation was declared the winner by default, as the other teams had been similarly sabotaged but had not survived. Later, in Headmaster Bayek's private observatory overlooking Aldebaran's fiery surface, Do-hyun stood in silence. The huge, red star churned below them, awesome in its power. "Do you know why this academy orbits a star that could destroy it with a single flare?" Bayek asked, standing beside him. "Because comfort breeds complacency," Do-hyun answered, remembering Jiwoo's words from his first day. "Yes, the galaxy needs species that understand survival, adaptation, and cooperation under threat." Bayek turned to face him. "Earth is classified as a Class 2 Deathworld, but humanity has another classification, kept secret from most species. Immortals," Do-hyun said. Bayek nodded. "Species with the rare ability to adapt fast enough to outpace extinction events. What you did today, that physical change, is something only a handful of humans have ever done. It proves you belong in that category." She handed him a small crystal key. "This gives you access to the Academy's restricted archives. Your real education begins now." The key glowed in Do-hyun's hand, recognizing his DNA. "The galaxy needs Deathworlders, like you," Bayek continued. "Not despite your adaptations, but because of them. In the coming storms, the immortal ones may be all that stand between civilization and extinction." "What coming storms?" Do-hyun asked. Bayek gestured to a terminal. "Use your key, see for yourself." Do-hyun inserted the crystal key. The terminal activated, showing images that made his blood run cold. A massive darkness moving at the edge of the galaxy, ships of unknown design, worlds going silent one after another. "What is this?" he whispered. "Something that fears no known weapon," Bayek said grimly. "Something that adapts to every defense. Something that might only be stopped by those who adapt even faster." Do-hyun understood then why he had been brought to Sunspire Academy. Not just to learn, but to prepare, to become what humanity had always been meant to be, the immortal Deathworlder. End of Episode 1.